Good day, everyone. In a way, we could say perhaps good year, kind of like good morning, good beginning of this new year for us on this 7 a.m. sitting and teaching. So I'm happy to be here for this anniversary day. And so we'll have a Zoom meeting afterwards. And for those of you who don't want to be on Zoom, I think I'll just keep the YouTube on, and you won't necessarily get all of it, but you'll get half of it of myself responding and talking and a little bit, and the Zoom link is at the very top of this chat, and I'll post it near the bottom when we finish here as well. It's also found on the IMC website in two places, in the calendar section of it, where it's listed as an event, and on the What's New, there's a little notice also on the bottom right-hand side of the homepage. And if you use those links, you have to use the password, which is METTA, M-E-T-T-A. If you use the link that's on the chat, it takes you right there. And I won't turn it on until I finish here, so there might be a minute or so in between. So as a child, I spent a lot of time swimming in water, and I loved to go underwater and swim as far as I could without and holding my breath. And that explains maybe a little bit why I pay a teeny bit attention to people who do free diving and people who do records for free diving underwater, the longest, deepest distance down into the water, or in the ocean, or perhaps a whole, swim the longest underwater or be longest underwater. And I think that one of the records, I believe, for staying underwater without breathing is about 11 minutes. So it's a kind of phenomenal that people can train to do that. But one of the things that people who do that learn to do is to quiet their thinking. Because thinking takes up a lot of oxygen. You need a lot of energy to think. And so they're certainly aware and engaged with what they're doing and very hyper attentive to what they're doing in a very particular way. But their ordinary energy draining, battery draining app has been turned off. The discursive thinking, the commentary that they do. And so this also happens in meditation. It's one of the reasons why in deeper meditation it seems that we stop breathing because there's very little need to breathe when this heavy app that we have that's really kind of going on all the time in the background, and it's one of these apps that kind of take over and work even behind the scenes, our thinking app. So as we get into meditation, the idea is to enjoy it, settle into it, and settle into that enjoyment, into the contentment, into the quiet, into the peace of it, even if it's just hints of it. Kind of a paradigm shift where we're orienting towards something else besides our thinking. And we're orienting towards the breathing and the peacefulness, the quiet, the stillness, the joy and the contentment that comes from developing samadhi. And with that, there's a shift away from the thinking mind, the commentary mind, having discussions and plans and memories and all that. And so to appreciate the value of that, appreciate how good it feels to let that part of the mind go quiet. And if these deep sea divers can do it, certainly we can do it as we do our own kind of version of deep sea diving, which is the dipping into samadhi, deepening into this kind of states of goodness and wholeness that don't require us to think a lot. And when we realize how safe it is and good it is and nourishing it is, then we begin to let go of the tremendous interest the mind has with this app, the thinking app. So to assume a meditation posture and to relax. Tremendous amount of what we're doing in going into Samadhi is in fact relaxing, letting things become tranquil. Not only letting go and relaxing the body, but also taking some of the mental apps offline. They're not needed. They're energy drains for our human battery. And they can come back online again later. But we're letting go, we're relaxing, doing less and less, except for settling in, steadying ourselves on the breathing, and enjoying it. So, taking a few long, slow, deep breaths, and on the exhale, thinking of it as turning off so much of the unnecessary apps that we have running, the tensions in our body, softening the shoulders especially, softening the belly. And if you are taking some deep, slow breaths, then as you stop that, appreciate that you are letting go of that effort. And now you're just letting yourself breathe in a more easy way. And then to continue relaxing the body a bit. The surface body of the shoulders, the face, the belly. And deep in the body. The deep holding, resistance, bracing. The deep holding ourselves. Even holding ourselves together. And then to also orient yourself to the quietude of the mind. Let yourself become aware in the ways that the mind is quiet, clear, relaxed. And as you exhale, settle into that quiet, letting go of the thinking mind. And if it doesn't let go completely, it's okay. For now, let it recede into the background. And then with the mind, let the mind land on your breathing. And have the mind, the attention, establish itself to be steady on the breathing. steady the mind on its focus on the breathing. And much of our physical experience of breathing is in fact silent, doesn't require thinking. The silent feeling and sensing of the body. Steady yourself on that experience of sensing the changing flow of sensations as you breathe. As you exhale, letting go of your thoughts and letting go into a quiet steadiness on breathing. And if you use any thoughts at all, let it be thoughts of counting the breath. Counting up to 1 or up to 3 or up to 10. Or simply the word yes. So said so quietly in the mind that it's almost like you imagine you're saying it. Steadying yourself on the breathing and whatever good feelings that come with the quietude and steadiness, breathing in and breathing out. appreciating the quietude that's here. Even if your mind is thinking a lot, look past it to the quietness, steadiness of attention on breathing. A paradigm shift away from your thinking mind to a quiet, steady awareness of breathing. And whatever goodness is in that attention. switching from thinking to a quiet seeing, a quiet sensing, aware of breathing, steadying yourself on the breathing. And then as we come to the end of this sitting, appreciating the paradigm shift from thinking to seeing, seeing with a quietness of the mind. So we're not seeing through the filter of our thoughts, ideas, opinions, but we're seeing through the quietness, steadiness, and safety of simply seeing, simple awareness of what is. And in the maybe the comfort and safety of meditation, can you turn the gaze of this quiet, steady seeing awareness to the people in your life, those who are close and you have contact with, those who are far away and you don't have direct contact, those who you know personally and those who you don't. And see if you can simply, from meditation, gaze upon them quietly, silently, without the judgments and the stories and anticipations of what it means. Just gazing on them quietly. And see if that gaze, that awareness can be kind. That in the quiet and safety of privacy of your own meditation, a kind, steady gaze. Be still and gaze upon everyone kindly. Not complicating it with your stories, ideas, memories, plans. Just the simplicity of others. And perhaps that kindness then can be expressed in the words of kindness. You might repeat after me. May they be happy. May they be safe. May they be peaceful. May they be free. May all beings everywhere be happy. So continuing on the topic of Samadhi and the 11th step of mindfulness of breathing. And Samadhi is, sometimes the word Samadhi is sometimes the generic word or general word for meditation, or meditation and cultivating our mind, our body, cultivating ourselves in the meditation practice. And then when we look kind of within this universe of Samadhi, there's all kinds of things that we are gathering together, we're unifying, we're coming together that to develop and grow and enhance our experience. And samadhi is not meant to be an experience that diminishes us, that makes us less and deprives us, but is actually the opposite. It's one of the richest ways of experiencing ourselves. Enhances, very fulfilling, very filling, very nourishing. And it's developing these beautiful, wholesome qualities, these beautiful, wholesome states of mind. But in doing so, it's also kind of getting out of the way but not adding all this extra tension and stress that can exist in the mind, and moves us to less and less stressful states of mind or states of being, less and less activated places of agitation, and moving to deeper and deeper peace. And as we do so, even wholesome states of mind, wholesome activities of mind that are more energetic than need to be, begin to be shed or relaxed or settled. And it's a movement from more energetic states to quieter and stiller states. And not that quietness and stillness, I think some people have very negative experiences of quiet and stillness and silence. So we have to kind of try to put those associations aside and somehow realize that the quietness and the stillness, silence that we're developing, this letting go, it's kind of like filling us with feelings of real goodness and contentment and fulfillment, satisfaction. But there is this movement towards less and less agitation, less and less energetic movements, and things that in that context of the mind getting more and more peaceful, things that were wholesome and wonderful before can be felt. Now they feel like they're a little bit too agitating. They're a little bit stressful to be there. So, for example, one of the things that happens in samadhi is there can be a lot of joy. But joy at some point seems like it's too much, it's too agitating. And even though at the beginning it feels like this is the best that anybody could ever experience, and but as we get more familiar with it, the energy of it seems like too much. And then we settle down more and more into a peace or a more quiet place that feels even more satisfying. So this movement, and this is kind of the general trajectory of deepening samadhi, developing samadhi, is this movement from more agitated, more energetic states to less energetic states that feel more and more satisfying as we go into them. And so I say this because it's a guiding principle for tuning into our practice. That the kind of the way to see the path forward in samadhi is to appreciate at some point, that really feel at some point that what felt really wonderful at one stage of practice, we're ready now to let go of it or let it become quieter and move to a less energetic, less activated state. And as that's the movement, that's the direction that the practice is going. And then there are various landmarks along the way that stand out as we do this process of settling that goes on, more and more peace that happens. But the principle is we're moving in this direction. And it's helpful to keep that principle in mind, because sometimes when people read about samadhi, they learn about like 4 stages of jhana, 4 stages of deep absorption. And it becomes a little bit mechanical or technical, like am I in the right place? Am I at the first jhana? Am I at the second jhana? And there's a kind of like samadhi by numbers that goes on, which can get overdone sometimes, and people are too preoccupied about the technical definitions and aspects of this, rather than living in the organic flow of samadhi, that we can, and just allowing things to unfold and not be so concerned about the numbers and stages and how far we've gotten. And it's easier to do that if you understand that principle, that we're going from more activated states to less activated, more stressful to less stressful, from more agitation to less agitation. And so there is a kind of a trajectory, kind of a path, and some of the landmarks of that are, a real appreciation for no longer, and the kind of relief from no longer being actively engaged in unwholesome ways of thinking. So if we have spent a lot of time with resentment and just like, why did that person do that? Or desire, just really want something, hostility, fantasy. And after a while we feel the flatness of it, the two-dimensionality of it, the way in which it keeps us stressed. And so with Samadhi, with developing meditation, we're starting to let go of those things. And when we really become separate from, at least temporarily put aside or deactivated those apps of greed, hate, and delusion, the unwholesome, it's such a relief. And there's a kind of a gladness and joy that wells up. But more important, as this relief and the goodness, the happiness of this relief, now the meditation can really begin to do our gentle work of practice, staying present, applying the mind and staying there. And this idea of the gentle work of just, okay, stay here, be with this, hang in there, come back, be here. Now it's done without the stress of having to struggle against unwholesome distractions and difficulties of mind. But there is a kind of gentle work of, okay, stay here, that can be represented by what happens on the in-breath. We have to, the beginning of the in-breath is a whole new experience. The mind has to connect to that, and then we stay there for the full in-breath. Then we connect again to the beginning of the out-breath and stay there for the whole time. It's a very gentle, some people don't even notice that they're doing it, but there is a kind of little movement, these two movements of the mind, little working, massaging, kneading the dough kind of experience. But it comes along with the relief and the happiness of not being distracted anymore, finally being able to be here and do this. As we settle in, and we land, and there's a steadiness, and there's a less and less of this need to make the work of connecting and staying. It becomes second nature. The mind is just starting to become stable, and we're just able to just rest in the breathing and just stay there. There's very little tendency to wander off. Just there, we're here, we're finally here. And that gives birth to a different kind of joy of just being really now, being able to put aside that extra work of connecting and being. And there's a kind of a gliding, soaring, sliding on the experience and so it kind of feels like, it's like petting the cat. The cat begins to purr. We're kind of there, being touched in some deep way, and it's kind of like the pleasure principle, where we're just kind of being touched with this beautiful feeling of just staying with the breath and being there and being that different kind of joy arises, and that can be quite strong and energetic at times. And after a while, that joy feels like it's too much, and so then it's ready to kind of to let go of that level of agitation, activation. And by tuning into, there's actually a deeper satisfaction, feeling of contentment, and feeling of mindfulness, feeling of clear comprehension, a simple awareness, simple recognition of what's happening, simple awareness of what's happening, and the goodness and contentment of just being in this happiness or this deeper sense of pleasure. And we let go of the joy and then as we go deeper in, that happiness feels, I don't know if it feels like it's too much, but the happiness begins to soften and relax, and it falls away into something that's much more satisfying, which is a deep sense of tranquility, equanimity, and where the awareness is very pure awareness. Sometimes it depends how we translate the Pali, the Buddhist teachings on this, but its awareness is very closely connected to equanimity, that it's awareness which is purified by equanimity. And so the awareness is very peaceful, very aware, and very still. And because there's so little mental activity, so little stressful activity, much of our ordinary way of experiencing ourselves has temporarily fallen away. People even have the sense of not really being in having a body. The body edges fall away, and no sense of being in a body. And it's not being disassociated, it's actually the opposite. We're so connected that and so still that we don't need the reference points we usually have. So the principle of this movement to less and less activity as we go into samadhi. And part of the purpose of this is to clarify our gaze, our ability to see, to observe, so it doesn't have a lot of agitation or filters or disturbances of unwholesome thinking, but even our thinking and projections and ideas and concepts that we overlay, even if the concepts are accurate enough, to no longer be overlaying concepts on our experience. And so it isn't that samadhi, we're doing it for its own sake, but for the way in which there's cleans our perception, cleans, purifies awareness so we can start seeing in a deeper and deeper way for the purpose of liberation.